Yeah, latest decision there from Sony Pictures. Now we're going to have a look at what's grabbing the headlines here in France in the newspapers. Of course, a lot of focus on that historic move between the US and Cuba to restore diplomatic relations, Flo.
Absolutely. It's a huge story here in France. Let's start with the front page of Le Figaro. I think they have a very nice front page today. Great title. It says, "The End of Half a Century of the Cold War." And if you can see that photo there on the front page, you can see all the key players. So you have JFK and Fidel Castro on the sides there, looking very defiant. And then in the middle, you have Barack Obama and Raul Castro, open palms, much more peaceful. And Le Figaro reminds us of the words of Obama, this is a new chapter in the region.
And one paper in particular very, very excited about this shift of ties. The communist paper, of course, L'Humanité.
L'Humanité, very excited today in their editorial. They applaud this historic development. The embargo may not have been lifted just yet, but there is hope. You can see here they're talking about the wall of the Caribbean is starting to crumble. Now, why is this happening now? L'Humanité says it's because the U.S. has finally realized that its asphyxiating embargo and policy of intimidation towards Cuba doesn't work. Now, Barack Obama has promised to launch a debate on whether or not to lift the embargo in Congress. Congress is the only institution that can do that. Slate wonders, though, will Barack Obama succeed where his predecessors have failed, especially Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton? Both of those former U.S. presidents also tried to lift the embargo and failed. Now, Slate says Barack Obama does have one thing in his favor, and that's that public opinion in favor of the embargo in the United States has never been so low. But he's going to face very, very, very tough opposition from Republicans and Cuban-American Democrats.
Now, you found a piece, haven't you, in the Huffington Post examining what could change if this embargo were to be lifted.
That's right. The Huffington Post dreams a little bit today, in the French version at least. What would change? What U.S. products would become very popular in Cuba and vice versa? Well, in the U.S., it's no surprise. Cuban cigars, of course, are a hot commodity, as is real Havana Club rum. Cubans, meanwhile, according to the Huffington Post, are really itching to be able to import electronic and information technology to be able to develop internet access on the island, because for now, internet access is rare and very expensive. And then another thing that isn't so surprising either is cars. Cubans want to get their hands on modern cars because, of course, the 1950s cars that you see circulating around Cuba are very charming, but residents of the island are ready to upgrade.
Now, of course, as the US considers lifting the embargo on Cuba, Western lawmakers also considering imposing further sanctions on Russia, this is.
That's right. Let's take a look at the editorial in Le Figaro today. It talks about from Cuba to Moscow. And this editorial says that it's surprising because on the one hand, you see relations thawing between Cuba and Washington, but it seems like the Cold War is in full swing with Moscow, and Le Figaro encourages the EU not to impose further sanctions on Russia. Rather, it should show the way and push for the embargo against Moscow to be lifted. It's in the interest of the EU.
Le Figaro showing the way here. They've solved an age-old mystery. Why are waiting rooms filled with old magazines?
That's right. Old and glossy magazines, especially gossip magazines. It's something we've all experienced in a waiting room.
Yeah.
You've got time to kill, and the only thing available is an old, outdated magazine. Why is that? Well, you can read about it in Le Figaro. These are researchers from New Zealand, actually, who did a very serious study that they published in the British Medical Journal. The Christmas edition seems like a great edition. Now, they discovered that basically, if current issues of glossy magazines were in the waiting rooms, well, they got raided, and if there were no glossy magazines in a waiting room,
make them
well,
rubbish,
there was a threat of a riot. And they pointed out, though, that magazines like The Time and The Economist always stuck around. So this is why you have old, glossy magazines to keep everyone happy.
Not good news for The Economist, I suppose, anyway. Thanks a lot, Flo. Flo filming over the papers there.